So our next speaker, no surprise, we saved the very best for last, is Ben Brooks, the founder of Pilot. Ben and I met each other years ago when he was not a founder of a company, and I was not doing what I'm doing. We met each other at Marsh, and it has been such a joy to watch Ben grow from a senior HR executive into a really successful entrepreneur. And what he's going to talk to us about today is not only his experiences as a management consultant. He started his career at Oliver Wyman and was actually an expert in the aviation business, which is very cool and totally unrelated to anything he's doing today, but also how he's made that transition and how all of us can think of ourselves as entrepreneurs within a larger business. And most importantly, he's going to talk about some practical approaches to help us all start to actually own our own businesses. So without further ado, Ben Brooks.
Beyonce at MetLife, all right. So Meredith had asked me to talk about what's it like to be an entrepreneur and to start my business, and what was that journey and story. It's like this, all right? I finally got sick of it. I was tired of working for the man, okay? I was done being micromanaged and all this process and compliance. Talk about the C word. I mean, it was nuts. And I finally left, right? And I got out, and I just started crushing it. And my strategy was to crush and to win. And so everything we did, I mean, we didn't do social media, we did viral, okay? Our technology, I mean, Tim Cook was calling us to beg us to be in the App Store, right? Everything we did seemed to touch, turned to gold. I mean, we didn't even have snacks in our pantry at our office. We just had champagne because we were always celebrating, right? I'm sure you can relate with where you're at in the market. So, my advice to you in terms of being an entrepreneur is win and crush it. Have a great GBSU. Thanks, guys. No, just kidding. No, it actually was nothing like that at all. It was much more like a bumpy road with loose steering, which we'll talk a little bit about. And when you think about your business, and you think about being a business owner here inside of a much larger company like MetLife, I had to do some of those things in my corporate career, and we'll talk about that. And there's a lot of really good things to think about in terms of just hard work and perseverance, a key part, right, of success. And thinking about product knowledge and having the technical understanding of how your products work, right, how the underwriting happens, the claims when it's appropriate, how you make money on those things. Sales process. Anyone that's worked in sales knows that if you follow good sales process, you have better results. That old charisma, right, bring that sort of charm and that energy and that spark to those meetings with clients. Or maybe it's leveraging process in general, right? Maybe it's those funnels that Jeff talked about. And then, of course, your industry partnerships with intermediaries like brokers and consultants. They all make a big difference. And these are probably things you're doing right now. You're in this room because you're already a successful sales professional here at MetLife. And what's most interesting about the 6 things on this slide is I'm not going to talk about any of them today. I'm going to talk to you about some personal experiences I've had as an entrepreneur that building on, these are all good things. I do these things too, right? And you should celebrate these things. But what I'm going to talk to you about is a set of experiences I've had both inside of companies and in owning my own business that were entrepreneurial, what I've learned from them, and what you can do to learn and apply these to your career here at MetLife. So let's start with when I was a 29-year-old kid at a 140-year-old company. Marsh. Our executive team, coming out of a very dark decade at Marsh, had declared that they wanted to invest a lot in colleagues, a lot in colleague engagement, and they wanted to develop people. And a lot of our feedback surveys had said colleagues wanted a lot more development, and we're going down the path of something very traditional and ordinary in that regard. And I intervened and said, hey, let me take on something. And we were leveraging social media to create a social learning platform because we have so many smart, experienced, older colleagues in our company. I said, let's teach each other. So it's, but this is very revolutionary for our company. This is not something we would typically do. And, we had just gotten started, and I got a little bit of money, and we're just getting going, and everyone was pretty skeptical this wasn't going to work. And I'm sitting in my office one day, and I get a phone call. And it's Marjorie. Ben, Joe wants to see you in his office right away. Well, I kind of took that deep breath, and I thought, oh, crap. Joe, one of our top executives. And I put on my coat, and I left my office, and I got to that elevator, and I hit 44, and I know the elevator didn't go any slower that day than usual, but I just was tapping that toe, and I thought, this is a mean joke. How fast, we stopped at every floor, and I finally walked across that executive floor, and very plush carpet, right, very serene, right? And Marjorie gave me that look, and that was my nod to go into Joe's office, right? So I get into his office, and he's got this 15-foot tall mahogany door, and I, boom, close the door. And he says, "Have a seat." I can tell this is going to be real fun. So I sit down and I smile, and Joe's in this big high-back executive chair in an office that looks pretty similar to this. And he says, "I saw the site." I say, "Yeah, what'd you think?" "Blogging, vlogging, you expect me to tweet?" And Joe was one of our top 3 executives at our company. And he'd looked at what we were doing with social learning, and I said, "Well, Joe," I said, part of social learning is it's not a top-down thing, like people contribute. We're just getting started, we're getting some energy, and we're getting the ball rolling. People are talking about grammar and photography and he's like, "This is not a priority. Who approved these topics?" I said, "Well, Joe, part of the internet and social media is people going to share kind of what they want. And that's sort of the magic and the beauty of it." Okay, Joe was not buying my social media argument at all. And he said, "Ben, it's financial acumen. For 10 years, I've been talking about financial acumen to HR and to marketing and to communications. No one listens. Our brokers are selling to the CFO and the risk manager, and they can't even read basic financial statements. A balance sheet, Ben, a balance sheet." So I thanked him for his feedback, and I left that 44th floor, and I got out, and I took off what was my blazer, was now my poncho, and I took that off, right? And I took a deep breath, and man, my heart was just racing, because I thought, damn it, here we have this great thing, and one of our top executives does not get it, and he's about to torpedo this thing. Pretty fitting for a guy that was in the Navy and submarines for 20 years, right? He knew something about torpedoing. So I just thought to myself, I've got to do something about this, right? We're at risk of this whole thing blowing up. And I thought to myself, that I have to do something to make it better. And I thought, how can I make it better? And I thought, and I got my team together, and I did a couple things. The first thing is I deployed the nicest, sweetest, patient colleagues on my team to work with Joe and his entire leadership to develop a financial acumen curriculum on our social learning platform. And they got super into it. And Joe, surprisingly, was a real natural. We started doing a lot of video, and he would make sure that pictures of his family were in the shot. He's like, people want to know me. And he really got that people wanted to connect, and he told great stories, and he made what was otherwise really commodity information around financial acumen super interesting, right? And then we promoted everything he did to make sure the whole company, not just his division, but globally. And he was getting calls and emails from all around the world from our colleagues. We made Joe a star within our company outside of his reporting chain. And I even just said, how can I make this better? And I landed single-handedly a huge spread for him in CFO magazine, which is quite the coup to rub into the CFO's face at our company for Joe, right? Mark was quite jealous. And we featured in the magazine that our clients would read about all the work he was doing around financial acumen using this leading technology. And that's where I really learned the entrepreneurial idea that I make it better. And what do I mean by that? Todd talked about that 8th puzzle piece, customer experience. If you broke that down, there's probably hundreds of micro puzzle pieces that fold up to that. And you think about, what does make it better mean? Well, make it better is about running to the problem or spotting the opportunity and pouncing on it. That's a very entrepreneurial trait. Whether you talk to someone that's a restaurant owner or someone that started a fleet of buses or someone that's made a cool app, they all see an opportunity or they see a problem and they're trying to solve it. And that's what we were doing inside of our company at Marsh. And I decided I make it better. And no one necessarily asked me to fix it or to address the Joe thing. I just decided to take the responsibility and ownership in that regard. So you may think to yourself, well, how do I make it better at MetLife? And MetLife is this huge aircraft carrier behemoth of a company, right? Already successful in so many ways. Well, you may want to ask yourself, what's something that just frustrates the crap out of me about servicing our clients or selling, right? What's something that just is annoying or gets in the way of me being successful, right? or enjoying my work? You know, what's the thing that would really grow my top or bottom line in my book? Those are all great places to look. And it can be something as simple as the shared drive that your team uses with sales collateral is a hot mess. Like, get it cleaned up one afternoon and tell people the next staff meeting how it's going to work. Maybe when you're doing a renewal presentation, you're bringing in people from all sorts of different areas of the company, it's a hot mess and you're not coordinated in front of your customer. Maybe you demand a dry run, right? So you're buttoned up and you're ready to go. You know, maybe you make it better and it's a customer service experience thing and you need to take a trip to a service center and work with your internal partners, right? Or it's a broker or intermediary where you need to invest time in a relationship to help, you know, solve a problem and create a better experience. The entrepreneurial side of you can look and say, I make it better. So a couple years later, I had left Marsh and Joe, and I was in the front seat of my friend Brian's car. He had a Range Rover, a very nice car, and he's got this French bulldog on my lap, this beautiful blue-gray French bulldog, and I'm petting his dog, and we're talking, and I had started executive coaching. I'd left corporate and started being a coach. And Brian himself is an entrepreneur, always pushing my thinking. He had started this website called The Points Guy. I don't know if any of you are frequent flyer travel mavens, but you may have seen his stuff. And he'd been very successful, and we started having this conversation. And he says to me, he's like, well, Ben, come on, like, what's the big idea? Like, coaching is great. And I said, well, yeah, but like, I don't know, like, I'm growing clients and I'm happy. And he said, but Ben, like, what's the idea? How do we really help people? What's this thing? And we just sat there, and I'm starting to pet the French bulldog a little faster, and I'm pulling his, his little Frenchy eyes are getting bigger as I'm pulling his ears, thinking, right? And right there in the front of that Range Rover was the birth of the idea for my startup Pilot. And what we realized is together in our conversation, we realized, gosh, like most people in their careers need help. Like everyone could use a coach. And how do we leverage technology to do that more affordably and more on demand? And that was really, the birthplace of the idea was on a highway somewhere in Maryland with a French bulldog on my lap, the most unexpected place, right? And I went from there and I just went all in. So I'm the sole investor in my company. I'm from a very middle-class background. I put my life savings in, and we went all in. Got incorporated, hired a team, built a brand, developed technology and product and website and all these things, and working towards this launch, which took a while, right? And it's always kind of almost like behind these drapes here, like behind a curtain, we're working towards this launch. And we're getting so close, but it keeps moving. And finally, about a week out, and I can't wait to stop spending money and start making money, right? And then my best person is out sick for a week. I ended up getting the flu. Our technology provider demanded all this money that wasn't in their contract. Our media plan was crap. Our website didn't look like I wanted it to look like. We just were not quite ready. But there's a will, there's a way, and we got launched a week later. And with sales, right, we sold it directly to consumers, and I had that bottle of champagne on ice, and I was excited after the first 30 days. Like, let's see where we're at sales-wise. And I'm checking in like I bought Bitcoin. I'm just logging in, seeing where we're at, right? And I'm looking, and I got that bottle of champagne, and I'm ready, and again, I was ready to win. I was ready. I put all this work in for like a year, year and a half, 2 years, building this thing behind the drapes, ready to go. And I looked at the number after 30 days, and we were at 2% of our sales goal. Can you imagine if you're at 2% of your quota for MetLife? I mean, you'd crap your pants, right? So. Or dress, or whatever you're wearing, in a gender-neutral sort of crapping way, right? Or everyone craps, right? It's actually a great book. Everyone poops if you have little kids. It's a great book. So we looked at that, and so here I had that champagne, and it was like I'd popped the cork, and it just sort of broke off, right? And that's where I learned a very fundamental lesson that rewired me forever in business, which was about I'd been behind this curtain building a Taj Mahal for 2 years with very little feedback from the market, very little testing, right? I was doing the things that had made me wildly successful in corporate, which was developing long-term plans and executing them. And we executed our plans with a lot of discipline. But the problem was we were marching in the wrong direction. So we were successful in executing the plan, but we weren't successful in the metrics that really mattered. So I learned then a lesson to start my role. And what I mean by that is I had to redefine what ready meant. For me to go out in the market and to be ready for a company that I founded, I had to have a perfect brand. And I had to have this great product that was hard-coded and built out. And I had to have this huge media strategy and social, all these things, big team, right? It's all my money, by the way, right, they were spending. And what I realized is that Start My Role has to have me outside of my comfort zone and to redefine when I can get going with things in a much more incremental way, to test and learn and grow. Todd talked about kind of lifelong learning in the Stephen Covey quote earlier, right? Part of it is I was just, I hadn't learned the startup lesson yet of the incremental side of putting things out for testing and learning. So with this lesson, it fundamentally changed everything I do in terms of how we run the business. Now, we don't hard code new features into our engineering and technology. We role play them as if we're sitting down with a coach, right, back and forth. We use sticky notes, and then we put them in very sort of, like you might even think of like as a flimsy sort of architecture as a prototype, and we make sure the thing actually works in terms of functionally works, rather than worrying about if it's hard-coded, and we do all those things that's reduced our cost to produce products dramatically and produce better outcomes. There are things that if we have a social media campaign, the tendency can be, let's line up 40 pieces of content and evergreen them, and we're gonna like launch them, like troops coming out of a plane or something, right? We'll put one thing out and we'll see how it works, and we'll make it better, and we'll change it, and we'll upgrade it, rather than having the same error duplicated 40 times, right? And so we just get started, and we start my role in a lot of different ways. Now you may think, at MetLife, how can I start my role? You may start with a new product. Maybe it's around financial wellness, and you don't know anything about the product. That's okay. See if your customer's even interested, right? If you get a nibble on the hook, right, bring in your product expert, or go learn more about it. But there can be new products you don't have to be deep experts at to just gauge interest or plant the seed. Generally, if you've probably realized in your sales cycle, people don't make instant decisions on big things like this. So like getting in the conversation early is a way that you can start your role. You may also think about this idea of like, what is this like wrapping ourselves around the customer, right? In a way that's not going to send us to jail or something, right? No cellophane around customers or big hugs, but thinking about that customer centricity. Maybe it's on a call later this week, you just ask one more open-ended question. I mean, how many of you, for your customers or clients, know their career goals? Some of the best professional service companies really target helping the career success of the individual as a primary lead into like the product and service and positioning it in that regard. So starting your role could be being a bit uncomfortable, and you say, I'm going to start my role just with exploring. I mean, maybe there's a new piece of technology, and it's Chatter or something else, or something you have in the suite of technology that you've been investing in, and you haven't been to training. Well, I haven't been to training for a lot of things in life that I ended up learning. You do not have to wait to be trained to learn something, okay? So you could go experiment. Trust me, you're not going to break it. There's a whole team of people at MetLife that make things unbreakable, right? And so that it like hard test all of it. So you want to think about starting your role. And starting your role, again, is not feeling fully prepared. It's not feeling like you have all the information or that you're deeply experienced, but it's kind of getting out there. And that's where the growth and the learning happens. And frankly, as the market continues to shift, that's how you'll be ahead of your competitors. If they're timid and they've got to have everything lined up perfectly, you'll be out in front, right? You'll be innovating. You'll be where Disney is, right? So start my role. So from behind the camera, the director says, rolling. And there I am in a studio recording some videos for our company. And we had invested all this time in this shoot. And we got the best video production company. We had scripts, we had the 4 cameras and all the lights, and we had grooming people and a big thing of food and all this stuff. And we spent this whole day recording videos that were going to be used inside of our product and on our website. And we just knew video's the future, and that's what everyone wants to see. No one wants to read some big, long white paper necessarily, so we're like, let's do a video. Let's reach people. And I was pumped. And I've done a decent bit of video work, so I don't wince at myself like on camera, thankfully. But I was really excited because, again, this is like, we're getting ready with all this. And I get the link back from the video people about a week later. And I watch it. I click on it. It's like, downloading slowly, and I watch it. And I'm thinking to myself, this better be good. I spent all this freaking money. This better be good. It's pretty good, right? It's like, it's okay. Like, it's good. I mean, it's well lit, and the sound is good, and there's motion graphics, and there's little music, and all this, right? And I sent it to a few people, and I got some feedback. And basically, it was like, the video is good, but something, like, you don't seem yourself, right? And I just knew something was missing, right? And I thought about it, and right there, it was like, thud. What was missing was me. What was missing was, out of whoever central casting sent over for that video wasn't the guy that had invested his life savings in something that was chasing a dream, that was super passionate. It wasn't the colorful and witty and hopefully charming guy that you're seeing here. It wasn't, fun and energetic and passionate. It was some image of what I thought a CEO should look like. And it was very professional, and it was, straight out of the studio and all these things. And in a way that, it was fine, but it didn't engage and it didn't connect. And it wasn't really myself. And my name isn't CEO, it's B-E-N, right? And I thought about that, and that's where I sort of learned this lesson, right? Is the more I'm me, the better I'll be. And what I mean by this is not unbridled attention-seeking self-expression, right? That's not, wear pants to work, right? But you got to have something to crap in, right? So what I mean by that, right, is that really leaning into your strengths that make you uniquely you and your story, right? Meredith talked about the MetLife story and weaving together 150 years and even the 100 years of group benefits, right? And having a narrative around that rather than just a number. A narrative is far more powerful. What's the narrative about you? So, I do like being quick on my feet, and, scripts actually don't work super well for me. I do much better with an outline. The script, I'm obsessed with thinking, did I miss the thing? And did I get it all in? And I'm following it, and I had a reading disability from when I was a kid, and so I don't do as well with that, right? So I learned the way, and I started doing things. So it's changed everything as a business for us. It's sort of the mantra. I mean, we even had a tie break about music, and Anna Lavery reminded me of this point, and it was just yesterday, and it was like, okay, yeah, what's more me, right? And that was, and of course, it was Beyonce, right? So not jock jams. So, although you should see me at the gym, but so what I will say about the more I'm me, the better I'll be is it just really changed interviews. I had the press call to ask quotes or something from Fast Company or do a podcast, and rather than have sort of talking points that I'm very, again, being in that CEO straitjacket, I would share experiences of what was going on with me that week or something really interesting maybe in my personal life that related to the business topic, and I gave much more impassioned and engaging interviews. Our videos, we've never shot another video in a studio. Now, we have professional credits and intro, outro stuff and titles, but a lot of them are shot in my office in New York, and there's people around and things, and it's very lively and engaging, and I do a couple takes on my laptop, but people find them to be much more like I'm talking and connecting with them rather than this stale piece of content from on high. And part of it is just even working with my colleagues, right? If something is on my mind, there's been a lot that's been happening in our country in the last year or two, we'll talk about it at a staff meeting, right? We'll open up that dialogue. We'll kind of engage in people's humanity, and that's who I am. I want to talk about the whole piece. So for MetLife, you think about what does the more I'm me, the better I'll be look like for yourself? It may be with fellow associates. If someone's across the country in a different department or division that you have to partner with on customer experience, as an example, do they know you as just a title, a job title, right, in an office location? Or do they have a more human connection with you? So when there is a breakdown, that they're treating you with more respect and there's a greater connection, right? All of you are very connected. People that are in sales generally like connection with others, right? If you wanted to be left alone, right, you wouldn't be in sales. Right? Hopefully. And if that doesn't make sense to you, let's talk afterwards. So, we've got a great job for you in compliance. So, we love the compliance people, we really do, but just not at this conference. So, you think about, the more I'm me, the better I'll be. It may be with your client or customer on a sales call. You're in their office, and you see something that's interesting, right? It could be a picture or an artifact or something, and you talk about, where you grew up. Get to know them. Insurance is one of the few industries in our economy that is a percentage of GDP, right? You all are in the middle, but it is a massive industry. And MetLife is a massive company, and you've got massive competitors, and there's just hundreds of thousands of people in the US alone working in this space. How do you differentiate yourself in your brand inside and outside MetLife? How are you memorable beyond being sort of a commodity person selling insurance? Part of that is being unique, and part of that is really letting people know who you are. And it can be the smallest bit. You may be thinking to yourself, gosh, it's kind of hard to be myself at work, right? And it may be a progress just to let just a little bit of that in, right? But we often are very attracted to people that are authentic, right? That are genuine, sort of tell one on themselves, right? That don't try to be perfect, and that are interesting, right? Well, I've hired people. I remember hiring someone, and that, they had tried to get into West Point 3 times, and I was super interested in them because of that, right? And their West Point, experience had nothing to do with the job at hand, but it had everything to do with their character, and had me drawn to them in that narrative. So think about what you can reveal, right? And what you can please. And then, frankly, with your strengths, if you're like Todd and you're the data guy, like be the data guy or gal, right? If you're, like Meredith and you're the tattoo woman, get a big, no, no, don't get the tattoo. Get a henna or something. But, think about, start your role slowly, right? So think about, if it's humor or you're highly organized, right? And you're the person that gets everything, and like bring that strength. It's not to say you shouldn't learn other things, right? But don't kind of dial down the thing that you're sort of gifted at, right? I dial down being quick on my feet or being colorful to try to be stale, right? So remember, the more I'm me, the better I'll be. So you may be thinking, how do I get better after GBSU? Well, GBSU is going to be intense, right? It's going to be like, a lot happening here. We've thought of this. So in the GBSU app, there'll be a little 5-minute assessment. And trust me, as the coach, we designed this just for you. We built this on our technology. It works super easily. It's confidential. We'll ask you a couple questions about what did all this mean to you? It's great to go to a conference and listen to a talk, and hopefully it's inspiring or engaging, right? It's another thing to take that back to the field or back to your office, no matter what your role is and what seat you're in, and have that make a difference. So take 5 minutes, a couple quick questions. We'll email you a plan within a couple of minutes. And it's just for you, it's confidential, but I promise you it will make a big difference in putting this to work. And again, big entrepreneurial thing is like not waiting for long-term plans, it's acting in the now, in the very short term. When I have 8 minutes and I'm thinking about following up with a sales prospect, I just follow up. Even if I don't have the perfect email, even if I can't find the template, I follow up. Sales is a little like the gym, You always regret not going, you never regret going, right? Follow-ups with prospects and customers are the same way, right? Reach out. And speaking of data, right? And data is great, right? Data sort of makes you go, but insights make you go, So we got a couple insights from you in the pre-work. And we asked a lot of you a variety of different questions. I asked about your comfort zone. Now, I will caveat that salespeople, my dad was a career salesman. I'm in sales with my company. I love salespeople. But salespeople tend to grade inflate a bit, right? Everyone thinks they're in the top 20% of salespeople, which we, of course, know is mathematically not possible, right? But you have to be confident, right? To be in sales, you get a lot of rejection. You got to try a lot of things, and right. So So I acknowledge all that. But just know, whatever you see numbers-wise here, you might want to just discount a little bit on number one. So we asked, how frequently do you get outside of your comfort zone? And most of you said, sometimes. And if we were at the bar last night, here at the Hyatt, and I asked you that question, the next question I would say, well, when was the last time, and how far outside of your comfort zone? And I would bet, a round of drinks or 10, that it was a long time ago and it was a toe in the water, right? And the thing is, as you are successful, the reason you're already here is you're successful. You're less likely to get out of your comfort zone when you're successful because the going's good, right? MetLife, 13% CAGR over the last 5-6 years, right? Like your commissions and all that have grown, your incentive thing. You're at events like this and the leadership circle and the golf thing and the stadium and whatever you're doing, right? And so yet your competitors, right, may be more hungry. They may be getting more outside of their comfort zone, right? And those people, when they get complacent, that's when you get disrupted. That's when you get sort of taken out. So it's more important for people that are at the top of their game to get outside of their comfort zone. If you look at great athletes, right, you look at, whether it's like, Serena Williams in tennis, or you think of like a Tiger Woods or something like that, they like rebuild their swings. And it's when they're at the top of their game, not when they're at the bottom of their game. So I want you to consider about getting outside of your comfort zone. And frankly, if you think about making something better, it would require you to get outside of your comfort zone. Starting your role is basically all about getting outside of your comfort zone. The more I'm me, the better I'll be will definitely have you be uncomfortable to bring more of that relative to where you are. Now, the other thing I thought was very interesting is we asked all of you to think as if you had your own insurance carrier. You had your own sick of the man moment, right? Don't leave MetLife. It's a great company. But you had your own sick of the man moment. And we said, if you're hiring a Salesforce, what would you look for? in that Salesforce? Well, as you can see here, a lot of things that were on that slide of 6 things I had earlier on, like working hard and perseverance and grit, all good things, and I'm pretty sure they're all things your competitors are probably doing as well. So not very special. So necessary, but insufficient. So in understanding some of your recent sort of upset wins you've had in sales, where business that a competitor's had for maybe 10 or 20 years, that's their long-term customer, and you've suddenly won the business, it wasn't that your colleagues were lazy for the last 10 or 20 years. In fact, they were probably working very hard to get that business. But the difference that made the difference in those upset wins was often the things that are down here about being a fast learner, right? Being bold and thoughtful and nimble. These are some of those entrepreneurial muscles that if you have those inside of the 7 or 8 puzzle pieces that you have here at MetLife, will really have you dominate in the market, because you'll have the agility of a quick, nimble moving player, right? But all of the infrastructure and resources and assets and strengths of a large market leading company. So just something for you to think through around those things. And what I will say is, if those things were valued lower by all of you, right, the likelihood you have those skills is also pretty low. If you don't value it, maybe something you don't have. And look, sales is great when if you think of the formula and I go in at 8 o'clock and I don't do anything but sales until 5 o'clock and I follow up with this many people a day, and sales people almost want a formula, right? The quick answer. And look, some of those things can work well, but I had a formula for launching Pilot and I followed it, right? And it didn't, we were marching in the wrong direction. So part of this is learning and seeing where the market's changing and where things are shifting so you can keep up with that. So where are we at? Think about I make it better. It takes some courage in getting out of your comfort zone to even be the kind of person that calls out that something could be better, and not just in the whispering, gossipy, or over drink sort of lamenting about things, but to just really take ownership and say, you know what, we're going to fix this customer experience thing, and I'm sick of this, and we're going to fix it, and you take that ownership of it. That will get you outside of your comfort zone. It will have to have you be bold, right, and a fast learner, and nimble, right, thoughtful. Start my role. Start my role. If you meet any entrepreneur that's had success over a long period of time, they are constantly outside of their comfort zone. It's like mastery is a mountain with no top. It is just this exhausting thing, but that's what it takes, is to always, just as soon as you've got it figured out, you need to stretch further and push out further. So start my role will have you. And I'm just warning you that your internal sort of wiring as a person will have you freak out a bit, right? It wants you to look great and have all your stuff together and da-da-da-da. But part of growth is getting some feedback. You may not even like the feedback. You may learn. Sometimes we release products and then people, it's like, womp womp, and okay, great. And sometimes I take it personally, and then I say, feedback's a gift, and you get better at that. I get better at that. And the more I'm me, the better I'll be. Self-expression can be very scary, right? As humans, we all crave sort of love and acceptance, and we fear rejection, right? But expressing yourself both in terms of your story and what's happened to you and why you are the way you are. Why are you at MetLife? Do your customers know why you're here, how you got here, why you stay, why you're engaged here? That could be a very interesting thing. In fact, recently at Pilot, we won a large deal with this bank. And I just asked the woman, why did you, not that we have a lot of competition, we have a very unique product, but I said, what sort of closed the deal for you? And by the way, if you're not asking that of your customers, you should, right? Don't assume, right? What made the difference? It may be something different than your hard work or perseverance that you have an inflated sort of importance for. So I asked her, and she said, you know what, you had that slide in there, and there was a picture of you, and it said, why I founded Pilot. And you talked about, you put your life savings in it because your friends were all sort of miserable in their careers, and you wanted to help out people in this broader thing. She's like, that's when you had my attention. In here, I thought it was the analytics or no data integration, and we took credit cards and all these other, techno product things that were in our white papers and whatever. It's none of those. Right? The thing that really resonated with her was the fact that I was all in on it, right? And the story behind it and the importance. She didn't even shop around. She didn't look for anything else, right? So that's where I was being myself in that moment that made the difference, right? And so make sure that you let your narrative around MetLife. I know I've met a lot of you over the last 6 months working with LEAD and Women in Sales and other programs. You guys have some interesting stories. You've seen some really interesting things. You have to tell that, right? You have to talk about your role as a part of this larger organization, navigating life together. What's your part in that? So I'll tell you a little aviation example. Meredith mentioned my work in aviation before. I always thought I was going to run an airline, so I haven't done that because I realized it's a hopeless business. But I named my company Pilot, so that's about as close as I get, right? So when I was in management consulting, I worked at Lockheed Martin out of college, and I worked on spy planes for the Army and the Navy in this classified program. A very weird job for a 22-year-old, but my life has been like that. And ended up in management consulting, and I was assigned to this group, and this is the largest helicopter operator in the world. They're in Canada. And they said, you got to help them paint the helicopters faster. And what you learn in consulting is you don't know much about something, but you brush up on it quickly, right? And so I definitely had to start my role with this. And I started working with these guys in the paint shop. And they had about zero interest in painting helicopters faster. Which is unfortunate because I was about 6 months into the job, and they were like, if you really nail this case, we're going to promote you, right? So I'm like feeling the sweat, and I'm worried about it, right? But I started to get to know them. And I had to do things differently. Like, one of the biggest things that made a difference with them is I would eat lunch with them in the cafeteria and not go off-site with my fellow consulting colleagues. Started showing them some respect, right? Got to know where they came from, if they immigrated, how long they'd been there. Got to learn the technical nature of painting helicopters, and I cared about the paint mix and sanding and everything else, right? So I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt, so we did all this process mapping, and we Kaizened the crap out of it, right? And all that, magic that we did, right? And, it was taking 27 days to paint a little helicopter. A Boeing 747-400, like one of the largest aircraft in the world, takes about 10 days to paint. It's taking them 27 to paint a little bitty helicopter, right? And the rule with flying assets like planes or helicopters is they only make money when they're in the air. So the amount that they were losing in profit was thousands and thousands of dollars a day, right? So it's a really clear business case about fixing this. And we started to address it, and honestly, it was the simple things that made the biggest difference at the start. They had a chemical shower in case they had a spill or something, and it was a brand new paint facility. It was leaning up against the wall. It wasn't even plumbed, and every day when they went in, they thought, our company doesn't care about us. Not only was it like a violation from a regulatory and safety perspective, right? It was a violation of the kind of psychological contract between the employer and the employee that will take care of you, right? They wanted a coffee maker. $35, I solved that, right? They had to walk 2 miles to get a cup of coffee, and they just wanted a little Mr. Coffee maker. Done, right? And they wanted and then there were things like the lighting. If you've ever done paint, they couldn't see, right? And whoever put the lights in didn't make it for a paint shop, right? So we had the lights. I brought an electrician in. We lowered the lights, and we did all of these things. And we mapped out in about 2-month period of time, we got it from 27 to 23 days, which may not sound like a lot, but given where I started with these guys that were interested maybe in painting helicopters over a longer period of time with their disengagement, right? That's where an actively disengaged employee can really hose you. They really got to it, and I had about 2 months with them, and we got it down to 23 days, and we celebrated, and it was fantastic. Here's the guys. Can you even see me with, I think there's a BlackBerry on my waist there back in the day, right? Really cool. Still single, and at least I got the MetLife color on my suit, right? I did that right. So, we worked with these guys, and you can see, like, Jas here with the earpiece and whatever, and we built these carts for their safety equipment, and they didn't have to run across to find masking tape and things. So 7 years later, I get a phone call. I'm a Canadian, remember? And he says, hey, Ben, it's Jas from the paint shop. Remember me, dude? I said, Jas? Yeah, I remember you. Like, what's up? And he said, dude, remember we had the 13-day goal? We finally hit it. 7 years later, okay? And I said, Jas, that's fantastic, right? And he said, yeah, we had that plan, and we just worked it, and we're going at it. And I said, and I started to acknowledge him, and he cuts me right off. He says, dude, we're not stopping there. 10 days, beast mode, baby, right? And I hung up that phone. And I'll tell you that for a coach or an advisor, nothing is more gratifying than seeing people take your advice and put it into action. It's like planting a seed and watching it sprout and watching it grow. So I invite all of you to grow yourself, to grow your business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One more round of applause for Ben. That was great.